right. Approval of the minutes, we have 8A and 8B. I'll take them in one motion if there are no changes.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, minutes approved. And reporting out of closed session, the board approved the comprehensive school safety plans for the 5 schools on a 5-0 vote. All right, so now we'll move on to item 10A, February Student of the Month. Who wants to do it? I guess Dr. Mernko is, are you here?
I think
Oh, there
we're-
he is.
there he
All right, so I didn't see him sneak in.
Came at the buzzer.
Aha.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us here. And before I get started, I just wanted to send a thank you. It's always an honor to be here to present, especially when we're here to celebrate our Student of the Month, Miss Hitana Carcamo-Gilroy. I also want to give a shout out to our Thornton staff who's here with us. They are the people on our team that make a lot of the magic happen and a big reason why we're here to celebrate Hitana as well. I'm going to turn it over to one of our staff members, a colleague who's been with us for over 25 years as a member of Jefferson Union High School District, and one of the people on campus who has played a major role in the success of Hitana, as well as been able to have a front row seat to see how inspiring of a leader Hitana is and will continue to become. So I just want to turn it over to Mr. Ed Lopez.
Good evening. I'll make it brief. I met Hitana about this time last year, it was a year ago. And as she was walking across the campus, she looked like a student who was looking for something a little bit different. So I asked her to come and visit and check us out. And at that time, we were coming out of the pandemic and we were coming back into class, and I was looking for a student to help lead. And I bet my money on her to help bring the Wilderness School into this next phase, and it's paid off. One of the things when she first came to the class, she was really hesitant and really shy and not sure of herself. And the way
my step-grandpa from Managua, Nicaragua, my mother, my father, and various family members related by both blood and love alike. My primary language was and is Spanish, making me bilingual. My home was filled with music, laughter, and the culinary sense of warmth and connection, life in both plant form, animal form, and human form. Most importantly, our home was filled with admiration for each person, from each person who resided in that home and the world around us. I am an extremely calm person. I am empathetic, observant, and loving. I am an easy person to talk to, but a difficult target to approach due to my exterior. I am an animal lover, a nature lover, and a person lover. I enjoy writing poetry, making and writing music, exploring herbalism, meditation, and reading tarot cards. I love astrology and the intricate shadow in which it lies. In intellect, I enjoy reading, writing short stories, and engulfing myself into informative YouTube videos, such as the fetishization of schoolgirls. Recently, I was awarded with the Student of the Quarter Award at Thornton, as well as an award for honor roll. As high school has been quite difficult for me, to be recognized and awarded for my efforts is a feeling unparalleled. Along with being awarded with acknowledgments, I've also been awarded with knowledge. Some responsibilities I hold at school include running the morning circle and being a lead instructor at the Wilderness School's White Hop Adventure Ropes course. Each course, I exercise my voice and power I hold within for the greater good, insurance, and safety of others. In the morning circle, it is my job to greet our clients, introduce them, and familiarize them to the student leaders and with themselves. Further into the course, I have the responsibility of holding each client's belay rope and getting them up and down the event safely. While doing this, it is also my responsibility, and my second nature, to connect with the clients emotionally and mentally. My journey to Thornton ultimately began when I was in the 8th grade. In December of 2018, my beautiful home on the ocean side of Daly City was no longer going to be my home. My grandma had plans to sell our house due to financial issues, which was hard for each and every one of my family members. We left our forever home on December 31st, 2018, leaving my mom and I with nowhere to go. My mom and I were displaced for 7 months, moving from place to place. A friend of mine's house in January and some of February. A room in a friend of my dad's home for the remaining duration of February to March. In April, a hotel room in Pacifica, and in May, a shelter home in San Mateo. As we remained in the shelter home for the first half of May, we were then no longer welcome to stay, separating my mom and I. My mom left to stay where she could, and I left to stay with my grandma and step-grandpa in their one-bedroom apartment. I loved staying with my grandparents so much. I had missed them dearly after we had all separated due to the loss of our home. Each night, I slept on the floor of their bedroom. A blanket, a couch pillow, and the comforting sound of my grandma's respirator, and the presence of people who loved me, bringing a feeling of serenity. Although I felt at peace, and one within, my grandma was not doing well. Due to catching sepsis earlier in 2018, the after effects hit her gradually. When I arrived to live with her, she had a respirator along with an oxygen tank. She was frail and tired, but still as feisty and as nurturing as she always was. As June came along, it was time for me to close one chapter of my life and open another. 8th grade graduation was right in front of me. As the summer came, my grandma's condition was worsening. Inside, I knew she was not going to be able to see a lot of my firsts. The woman who had told me stories of her childhood in El Salvador, as I lay in her bed, her fingers pacing my strands of hair. The woman who also proudly posted me on her Facebook showing off her nieta. The woman who would almost annually take just her and I to eat at Beach Chalet. I began to rebel and make questionable choices due to the circumstances I was in. As the end of the summertime approached, my grandma was ready to be sent off on her trip to El Salvador. My family and I accompanied my grandma, Gloria, to the airport. We sat and talked before her departure. She told me beautiful things. Go to school, mamita, she said. Do good for yourself. I love you, mamita, she told me. My family and I said our goodbyes, smiles overriding our tears and our inner knowing of what was to come. A few weeks before my freshman year commenced, we received news my grandma had passed on to the next life. Freshman year began as my mom took over the couch in my grandma's apartment, my step-grandpa in the bedroom, and me on the floor of the living room. My longtime best friend ended our friendship unexpectedly. My heart was hurting, but my head was high. As freshman year went on, I began to skip school every day. I was hurting, I was sad, I was lost, and I was what it felt like to be alone. My friends from elementary and middle school began to disregard me at Westmore, the high school I attended until I came to Thornton. My grades were plummeting, as was my well-being. My sophomore year, my grades were still as bad as they were my freshman year, my online attendance alike. My junior year, my grades improved drastically. However, I was not on track for my expected graduation date. In March of 2022, I transferred to Thornton, my first day being my 17th birthday. At Thornton, I made beautiful friendships, loving relationships, amazing bonds with the staff, and repaired the bond I had and have with myself. My grades have never been better. My accomplishments do not go unrecognized, nor do I. I have never felt more comfortable at a school. As my 18th birthday approaches, making it almost a year since I've been at Thornton, and the Wilderness School, I truly feel like a replenished version of the person I once was. As I finish my story off, keeping it somewhat short and somewhat sweet, I'd like to formally end with an original poem written by me. See, I grew up in a world of hail, a family full of hurt and betrayal, followed by handshakes that would soon prevail. Voices arguing all night, expressing emotions these drugs flighty might. As opposed to what's deemed as tight, I don't like to fight, I'd rather exercise my rights. A firm believer of love, the only thing that keeps me above ground, above sound, above anything that would care to see me round after round. I settle down, into my sheets, my abuelita giving me these crumbles of mazapan sweets. Combing my hair, filling the air with warmth and grace, I say at dinner, ganaste eres un winner. My grandpa says to me, and in the moment I feel so free, camarón con limón, food for the soul. Trencitas, trencitas, mommy make them tighter. My beautiful mother, never a liar. Pure love in her nature, pure gold in her heart. Loving you, there was never a start. Riding a bike around this lake, plus 10 steps we would take. Good night, Daddy, sweet dreams, I love you, I do. And if those bedbugs bite, beat them till they're black and blue. Father, oh father, what a beautiful soul, lost in the mischief of this never-ending stroll. Big bug eyes, baby button nose, chata bien chata, as sweet as a rose. A petal once falls, a new one to bloom. Gitana, gitana, que linda eres tú. Thank you.
Open it up to the board and student trustees if you'd like to say anything to Gitana.
Let's say, like, that was very beautiful and very well said. And I know it takes a lot to come up in front of everyone and say that, but I can tell that you put a lot of time and effort into collecting your words, and it's very powerful.
Thank you.
Oh, what a beautiful thing to say, especially that poem at the end. I almost started crying. You have such a way with words, and it's like I got a glimpse into your life. You have a very powerful voice, and I can tell that you do care a lot.
We have a lot in common, actually. I was at Thornton myself. That's where I graduated from, and we have some similar stories in there that I was kind of relating to you with as you were talking. Growing up with, my grandmother raised me. I didn't have parents growing up. I lost my grandmother about 5 years ago, but you mentioned listening to her little machine going. My grandmother had the same machine, so I remember I used to go over there, just the buzz of it, and that you could hear the oxygen coming out of it. So that was pretty neat. But you do have a really cool way with words. That poem was amazing. I was thinking as you were talking, for you kids these days, we used to be able to shelter. When we were younger, we didn't get the exposure of how big and ugly the world is, and it can be. It could be beautiful too, but with all the things that are going on and how much you guys take in and have to absorb, it's a lot more than kids used to have to do. So it's tough, and especially going through the pandemic thing. So just seeing you kind of come from that spot where you weren't sure where you were going to be heading and finding your way out. I mean, that says a lot about you, your character, and where you're headed. So keep it up. Great work. Yeah.
Boy, I'm trying not to cry. You were so powerful and inspiring. And to really be vulnerable and share that with all of us. When I read it on paper, when I read it on my computer, I thought, this girl's amazing, and that she is sharing all of her hardships and her struggles with us. And to see you in person, how strong you are, I think the possibilities are endless for you. You're a very powerful woman, and you have so much to offer this world. You're an instructor. I mean, I've been wanting to try that ropes course. I'm putting this on camera. Maybe, if our board would be able to do that. I'm sorry.
We'll have a special session.
I would be safe knowing you were there to help me. And I love that saying that you said, that you had people related by blood and love alike. And I think we all have those sorts of people. Thank you for your family and your Thornton family for being here. Thornton always shows up for theirs, always. And God, I'm so proud of you. I'm really proud that you represent our school district so well, and I can't wait to see what you end up doing, because you are going to go far. Thank you.
So when I read this at home, I was a mess. And it was even more emotional sitting and hearing you say it out loud. So first of all, I just want to thank you for your courage, because most students of the month don't speak. We ask them if they want to, but they usually decline. So not to not just speak, but to share in such a vulnerable way was so powerful, so powerful. And, also having a similar story, being a parent and, being homeless with my kids. And I'm not going to cry because you didn't cry. And I was like, you didn't cry, so I'm not going to cry. But I just want to say first to the parents, you feel like when you can't provide the basics for your children, that label that people put on you. But look at the powerful, beautiful child that you created. And for me, that's how I'm going to know you forever, that you produce such a beautiful soul that can impact the room in the way that she did. Kudos to you. Kudos to both of you. And to you, life is not fair. And it's terrible to have to learn that at such a young age. But the benefit that comes out of that is you have such a heads up on so many people to know who you are. Like in this short time, I know who you are. And the fact that you can go through so much and still stand there courageous, like the world better watch out. The world better watch out. And I just want to thank you for highlighting and just saying so eloquently that what you went through and how you came out is why I became a school board member, so that I could support the people that supported you. And so I am so grateful to all the Thornton staff, all of the Thornton staff. Like over and over again, with my child and with so many children, you are the definition of love, because you support and treat everybody in the way that they deserve to be treated. So thank you to each and every one of you. And I hope that we see more of you. I hope you come back and run for office here. Like I just can't wait to learn about what you do. And regardless of what happens, because life continues sometimes to be rough. If you hit a rough spot, know that you have so many people who are cheerleaders here for you. Even if we never see you again, I will never forget you. So thank you.
Kalima just stole what I was going to say. I was going to say it. So I have a 4-year term here. I just started it. So in 3 years or so, if you want to come back and visit us, maybe we can talk about some things, and nobody has to put up with me anymore. I wish you, I want to say luck, continued success that you've earned. You have a lot of good time in front of you. I hope you enjoy it.
Tana, the gentleman on your left, when I was at when I was at Thornton for the family day, could not stop talking about you. He was so proud of you, about what you've accomplished. And he was just beaming and pointed you out when you walked by with your plate of food. And with what you shared tonight about yourself, about your family, I'm just like my colleagues, I'm impressed, and I can't wait to see what you do. And I am eternally grateful to the Thornton staff, because time and again, the work that you guys do to really change the lives of our students is nothing short of miraculous, and I am so grateful to every one of you. And it's because of students like you, Katana, that I'm here as well. This is your reason why I do what I do, to support this district and the students here, because our students come first, and every single one has a powerful story, and I'm so grateful for your powerful story tonight. Thank you so much, and congratulations. And I think it's time for us to actually give you an award in a moment after Ms. Presta speaks.
Thank you. You know, honestly, I did cry a bunch of times. I don't think I can say it any better than was already said, but thank you for giving me a chance to just say that I'm grateful for you representing our district in such a profound way. Your words are very strong, and I know that through whatever comes, because life is difficult oftentimes, and it's not fair oftentimes, but you're strong, and your light shines very brightly. So I just choke myself up thinking about you. So congratulations, you really deserve this honor, and I too am really excited to see where your life goes. So come back and visit. Thank you.
We'll do some photos and give her the
Yeah.
award.
Okay. Is Chelsea, are you taking the photos today? Okay.
I get to play Austin.
So if you'd like your family to come and take a photo? Thank you. Stuck in there. And you can take your families with you like.
You in the middle. You guys come around.
You want to come over here?
One, two.
Do you guys want just one with your family? Sure. Or do you want us to take it on one of your phones too? Here. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, sure. Sorry. Ready? Yeah. Very nice. All right, congratulations.
So Austin is not here to take the usual
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
You
Congratulations.
do not have to stay. You may go. Yes. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Of course, thank you.
Our pleasure.
Yeah.
Our pleasure. Yeah.
Should be, oh my goodness.
Yeah, you should be super proud.
Itana, your grandmother's proud of you too.
Yes.
She visits. She visits often.
They do. They keep an eye on us for sure.
Makes it
Yeah.
very known.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Thornton teachers and staff.
No, thank you guys. Have a
Props to
good rest of
Thornton.
the night.
Ay, ay, ay. I need Kleenex.
Oh, I know. I was a mess when I read it too.
Really?
Yeah, that was.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Night, Denny.
All right.
Well, that was training.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, I think you'd have a lot of takers. All right, moving on. Item 11A, board report out. We'll start with our student trustees at the far end.
Things at Terranova I think have been really well. I don't know if there's anything super specific to talk about, but no negatives, no extreme positives. I feel like it's kind of hit the most mundane point in the school year where we're just sliding along between ski week and spring break is a stretch, but all has been well at Terranova.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Did you recently have a winter ball or something?
We did. We had our winter formal in January, and it was at the United Irish Cultural Center. And then today we actually just released our prom venue, and we're having our prom at the Pearl in San Francisco. And me and all, yeah, yes, I'm so excited. I feel like I've been spending all of my time planning that. So it's cool that we're not keeping any more secrets, and everyone knows everything in terms of prom.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'm looking up too.
Jefferson, everything's been fine. Again, it's like that kind of weird period where there's like nothing going on. Mission Fusion just finished their shows like a couple of weeks ago. It was all really great Saturday. I think we basically sold out, if not completely sold out. And we finished our team rally. That also went very well. Nothing else really to report. We also had our winter formal, but that was also in January.
Great. Trustee Walker.
I went to Mission Fusion, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's where I've seen you before. I never set foot in the Jefferson campus before that, so it was a really nice introduction.
Yeah, pretty big campus. Nothing to report. I'm going to be visiting the Dominique Hoskins Black History Museum on Friday in Redwood City, so I'm kind of excited about that, checking that out. So.
Cool.
So I also went to Mission Fusion. Excellent, Eden, excellent. Yep. But I couldn't stop looking at you the whole time. There she is. It was just an amazing show. And then we also were at the San Mateo County School Boards Association dinner meeting last night, many of us. And it was a great presentation on equity and race. And it was just good to be around. There were about 54 education leaders there. It's awesome.
Same when we went to Mission Fusion, we saw you, Eden. Dan and I were so proud of you. And, again, so much kudos to all of the students and the staff and the parent volunteers who helped put that together, because I know it's a huge production. And I'm really glad that it didn't rain a lot. So that it made it easier. I also went to the San Mateo County School Boards Association meeting, which was great and a good turnout after I finally found a room where it was being held, because I was a bit of a maze. And I also spoke for the district at the CASH conference, talking about our workforce housing, which was really nice and well received. And with Andy, did a virtual tour. I'm not a virtual tour. I'm just used to saying virtual a lot. In person this time, tour of with Santa Cruz Unified. So it was nice to talk to other districts and hope that other districts will also move forward with looking into housing. And one of the reasons why I've used so much of my time doing this is just because, while it does give us an advantage to have it, it's also thinking about public education as a whole. And, we're as good as our neighbor districts. We all have to hold each other up because we don't have each other's backs. No one else will, as we've learned with public education. So really hoping that some of the districts that come through here and move forward and be successful in the same way that we were.
I agree. It's good to encourage those other board members in other districts when they're asking questions about what it takes to build faculty and staff housing. So it was good to talk to Santa Cruz yesterday. I also went to, as I mentioned earlier, to the Thornton Family Day, which was actually pretty cool. It was just fun to just get out there on campus and talk to staff and see the students. And it was actually a really great turnout. I think this format actually is going to work really well for them. just much more casual, the barbecue and lots of food. And did I mention there was lots of food? Yeah, it was great. It was really great. Yeah, so it was fun to be out there. I was also out at Mission Fusion as well, but can we also talk about those cookies from the culinary arts program? That was fantastic. You know, the 3 different cookies, I know this is a very
fighting over the
food-oriented board
lemons.
meeting.
We were fighting over the lemons.
The lemon cookies in particular were great, but there was the chai latte cookie.
Yes, I had
And then
that.
there was the double fudge chocolate cookie as well, but the lemon were by far, I think,
Gone all the
primo.
way to Andy's heart.
I know, right?
Trustee Montalban is actually agreeing completely, so there we go. No, Mission Fusion was great, but those cookies really just added to the Mission Fusion experience.
That chai snickerdoodle.
Yeah.
That was good too.
Chef Scott, you guys like that.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we'll make sure we just snip out this little piece for the chef. All right, Ms. Presta.
Thank you. And yes, I was fighting over those lemon cookies at Mission Fusion. My son was like, can we just take a few home? Can we get some extras? Mission Fusion was awesome. I'm also going to mention, because there's not a Westmore student here, that in a few weeks, March 16th through 19th, their musical Legally Blonde is playing. So I'm looking forward to going to that. Last week we had off. There were some administrators working, some staff working. I did not work. I took some time off and just rested and saw lots of vacation pics and was at first envious, but I shared with the board earlier that while I was envious of not having vacation, it turned out to be a really good thing that I just got some rest. So it's that time of the year where it's good to be rested because we're going to gear up for lots of stuff happening in the spring. Let's see. I was at the San Mateo County School Board Association dinner last night. We saw a really great presentation on the equity work being done in Campbell. And so that was really great. Ms. Baca was there with us as well, so thank you for coming, Ms. Baca. And I'm looking forward to the presentation tonight about our equity work. And that's it for me.
And before I kick it to AFT, I forgot to mention that I went to the CASH conference on Friday because our district, along with our architects, SVA architects, received a jury citation award for 705 Saramani. It was actually pretty cool to accept that award on behalf of the district. And, the CASH conference, the Coalition for Adequate School Housing, it's really for facilities and construction and architects in K-12, in the K-12 space. And they give awards for the various designs of different schools across the state. But because they don't have a category yet for housing, they created one called the Jury Citation Award. So it was actually pretty cool for us to be able to actually receive that. So pretty cool.
May I add one? You reminded me of one more thing as well. So our Director of Communications and Staff Housing, Austin Warden, is heading down to San Diego to present at the CalSPRA conference. I don't know what it's public relation, I don't know, public relations, I'm not sure what it stands for. But he has a great presentation planned, and I'm very proud of him for taking this on. So I'm sure he can share it with us, and maybe can show that at the next board meeting, but wanted to say that publicly.
Great. All right, and now our AFT 1481 report, Mr. Lopez.
Yes, the only mention I have tonight is the CFT convention's happening in San Francisco, March 17th through the 19th. Hundreds of CFT members and guests throughout the state are going to gather in San Francisco. The biennial convention is the highest governing body of the CFT, and Monica Casey is on the slate to be a CFT vice president. So
Wow.
look for the results, stop the ballot if you can.
Vote often.
Say again?
Nothing.
Okay.
I'm making a joke.
Now you threw me off.
Sorry. Sorry.
The theme of this year's convention, United for Justice, United for Education, it reflects our continued commitment to building the schools our students and our communities deserve. And looking forward to Monica's return. Thank you.
Great. And do we have a COVID-19 response update?
We do.
Okay.
Hello. Take-home antigen tests were distributed to all students and staff the week prior to the February recess, with them being asked to take one this past Sunday or Monday morning before returning to school, and again tonight, before going back to school tomorrow. As of yesterday and today, 11 positive cases have been reported to the district, substantially lower than the number expected after returning from the week-long break. We continue to update the district dashboard when a positive case is reported to the district, along with biweekly exposure notifications being sent to families in the affected areas.
Great, thank you. All right, jumping over to consent. Is there a motion to approve consent?
Just need to make a comment about item 13A1. So we're removing the March 7th meeting date, but the calendar that it's attached does not remove it. It still highlights the 7th. So that needs to be amended.
Okay,
So moved with that amendment?
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, consent agenda passes, and the board meeting of March 7th will be removed, and we just got to make sure that that comes off the calendar.
Yep.
Okay, great. Item 14, public comment. Do we have any public comment this evening? Okay, then we'll move on to item 15A1 for the ethnic studies update and the course of study proposal. Ms. Baca.
So educators from Jefferson, Oceana, Terranova, and Westmore came together during the 21-22 school year in the Ethnic Studies Task Force. There they began developing as ethnic studies practitioners and charting the scope and sequence for a course. The vision for ethnic studies in the Jefferson Union High School District is to provide safe and brave spaces where students, teachers center the stories, experiences, and knowledge of people of color, challenge and dismantle racism and intersectional systems of oppression, and cultivate communities that are committed to wellness, liberation, and solidarity. Tonight, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Accountability, Dr. Lori Robinson, and Teacher on Special Assignment, Ms. Asra Ziauddin, will be providing updates on the progress of our ethnic studies at Jefferson Union High School District. In addition, there is also a course of study proposal for discussion that will be approved in the following board meeting. And Ms. Ziauddin.
Hi, everyone.
Gotcha.
Just next to me?
I'll sit here, but just, to look cute. Like, not age anything.
All right. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you all. Some people have not met, so nice to meet you. I'll be presenting our update on ethnic studies tonight. And before we begin, I'm actually going to do a practice that we're also trying to do and implement in our ethnic studies courses, which is a land acknowledgement. And in doing so, I would like to begin by acknowledging that I'm a settler on the land that I reside upon and the land that I teach on. This land has been the home to the Ohlone people, and they are still here. I think one of the core components of ethnic studies is trying to honor those who have been here in the past, especially where we are working, living, dreaming upon. So I think that's very important grounding for me. And before I introduce myself, let me just say, in general, for ethnic studies, this is something familiar to probably quite a few of you, but I'll just reiterate to maybe some of you who may not have seen it before or have not heard my perspective on this. But this ethnic studies pedagogy, at least, is one element of district topics and initiatives that we're taking. And I want to emphasize that this is one piece of something that will provide students meaningful engagement, and that to all students in the classroom. So I want to say it's not a separate piece. I really think that, as far as developing ethnic studies, it'll be hand in hand with a lot of these things. So I've gotten training on UDL this year, for example. Some of the teachers I work with have gotten training on grading for equity. A lot of us are trying to implement constructing meaning, meaning those academic language frames in these sort of classes. So we're trying to, incorporate many other initiatives as well. So just wanted to state that first. And then, of course, a little bit about me. So my name is Asra Ziauddin. So for those of you who don't know me, it's spelled A-S-R-A, pronounced like U-S-R-A, so Asra. And I grew up in East Bay area, Fremont, and then in Pleasanton. My parents are still in Pleasanton. I have a brother in San Jose. I live in San Francisco right now. And a couple things, my academic background. So I went to SoCal for college, went to SoCal, got my teaching credential master's at USF. I specifically got the teaching credential for social justice education. So that's really where a lot of my passion lies. And then was at Jefferson for 5 years. And then in that capacity, I was a history teacher, United States history, AP World, teaching English language learners, etc. And now I'm a TOSA at the district office, specializing for the ethnic studies program as well as social sciences. And that is my cute cat, who when I come home comes and runs to me, and then my husband's just in the background. But anyway, yes, that's my cat, Nico.
There we
Yeah,
go.
my cat, Nico. And so I'll start with our story. So how did ethnic studies become a reality at JUHSD? What I want to underscore with this story is that our district is very supportive, and I definitely appreciate that. However, a lot of the impetus and a lot of the push to make it into what it is today, and the update I will give you, came from teachers. And so students are definitely asking for it as well, but particularly a group of educators, including myself, we came together in the summer of 2020. Now, I mean, we don't want to go back there, but if I recall the summer, quarantine at its peak, many things happening in the world, and unfortunately a lot of things that were really depressing and really truly heartbreaking, right? And I think the biggest one I can reference is the brutal murder of George Floyd. And I think that really shook me, that shook a lot of my colleagues. And I think at a time when we were really feeling hopeless, in addition to that, many other lives were taken, right? I have a few. This is a slide that's actually a little old. I can update it with more names. And unfortunately, that's the reality of the world we live in. But as teachers, my colleagues and I, and these are people from across different sites, Westmore, Jefferson, Oceana, et cetera, we were thinking about, what can we do? We feel so helpless. What can we do? Well, we're teachers, we can teach. And so that's really where a lot of us got that fire to really, really push and implement a course of ethnic studies, in addition to just the philosophy at our district. So that's really where it comes from. And this is something that, we wrote together as a statement. We all came together after the brutal murder of George Floyd, which we see as a continuation of the dangerous institution of white supremacy that is deeply rooted in our country. We hope to rally educators around the idea of anti-racism, actively resisting racist structures through engaging with our community of staff members, students, and families. We're guided by the framework of ethnic studies. And again, this is just a statement by me and several other teachers that summer. And that kind of lends us into a discussion of what are these characteristics? So what did we even mean by we want to bring an ethnic studies program here? And these, I think, are the essential 5. One, it being anti-racist. I think that's a good buzzword for us, particularly meaning that ethnic studies is something that hopes to eliminate racism. Decolonizing, a core understanding, of course, that history doesn't begin with colonization in that practice of land acknowledgement, for example. That would be something that falls under that category. Community responsive, it's tailored to the student population of the area or school the course is taught in. For instance, a school in our district currently that's piloting, perhaps Jefferson, might have a slightly different program from someone like Oceana. So I think that's a reality we have to acknowledge. And our district in general might look different from a program in LA, right? And so that's what I mean by community responsive. Intentional, it centers the stories, experiences, and knowledge of people of color and works against historical erasure. That bit, word for word, is also in our vision statement, so that was very, very important for all of us. And hopeful, ethnic studies critically analyzes the world in order to envision a just society and change of surroundings for the better. And so moving into our actual accomplishments, this was actually the year 2021 to 2022. I still write dates and I write 2021 down. I know it's 2023, but I'm still stuck in timelines. This year was when we had our task force. So this was when we had a good number of educators, so 10 educators across JUHSD, every single school was represented, were trained in ethnic studies pedagogy and created a vision statement that was actually read partially by Ms. Baca earlier. And the pedagogy is something where we're getting help from an outside consultant agency, Community Responsive Education. It's a group of folks who have done work with other school districts. They're actually partnered with Jefferson Elementary, which is great, and have worked with folks around the state. Many are actually current professors at SF State as well. Folks in the task force also created a scope and sequence. This was more of a draft form, and I'll just get into the breakdown of that in just a second. And 3 of our sites prepared to pilot, and they had some partial release dates. That was spring 2022. And so this was our vision statement. It was actually already read out loud, so I'll actually move on more to the explanation of our units. And these are the 4 units. And so as we see it, Unit 1 is self and stories, meaning students are really exploring identity, their ethnic heritage, and also those of their peers. And while doing so, they're building a lot of communities. So there's going to be a lot of classroom community building. Teachers are often participating in these activities and are encouraged to do so. Unit 2 is then systems of oppression. This is where we get a little more into frameworks, where students are naming and analyzing the systems that operate around them. Then we get into social movement solidarity. This is much more social science history focused in the sense of students are researching historical examples. One key one would actually be the SF state student strike in 1968 to 1969. And that one is pretty exciting. We actually, this year at least, are taking our students on field trips to SF State. So this unit we're trying to bring alive a little bit. And so the kids are actually going to SF State and understanding that history of what happened on the campus and the origins of ethnic studies. And finally, Unit 4, which is Community Empowerment and Agency, where we hope the students are engaging in projects that allow them to reflect on some of the principles or some of those ideas from the course. And now moving into this year, of course it's not done, but so far what we have been doing is that the teachers who are piloting the course are actually revising the scope and sequence. We had kind of a bare bones sort of framework before, and now we're actually putting the meat, I think, onto the bone. So we have really hefty essential questions. We're aligning some of our projects. We're thinking about other core understandings. And so that's come a long way with both release days plus time after school that teachers are actually working together and collaborating, which is great. In addition to that, one thing I also should have mentioned during the vision statement, our vision for ethnic studies is not that it's just one class, right? And I think that was said in previous meetings that, of course, yes, that is important to have the class. However, in addition to that, it's implementing and integrating this philosophy into the other classes, giving other teachers training as well on the philosophy and all these, characteristics, all these principles. And so an important thing we've started doing this year is actually bringing in English teachers. And so English teachers, again, across the district are coming in for training with those same consultants, community responsive education, as well as myself, as well as a few other TOSs in the district, to try and think about these critical lenses and how they can apply it to units they're already doing, perhaps new books that are more culturally relevant that they've adopted. And so that's going pretty well too. So that is also occurring this year and going to continue. These are examples of some of the essential questions. So one for each of the units. For Unit 1, we have this question here. Will exploring our identities improve how we interact with each other and use our voices? Unit 2, do the systems in our society humanize all people? Unit 3, can organizing resistance to oppressive systems bring about change? And Unit 4, what will we do to bring social justice to our communities and the world? I'll also go over a brief rundown. I know there's a lot of text on these slides, but essentially explaining what the course aspect, although we are integrating frameworks into other departments, looks like in each school. And so the first school we'll talk about is Oceana. This is a school, they have humanities, so they've collapsed English and history together into their humanities framework. And so this is one school where all the ninth graders are currently taking ethnic studies. So we have 4 sections, 4 teachers are actually teaching it, and this runs year long. So it'd be from August to May this year. Jefferson has the course actually as a sign-up. So there are a number of students that are taking that are mixed grades. It's actually still majority freshmen based on some other information that I'll share with our survey. And this is on the 4x4 schedule. So although the course is taught as 1 year, it's taught in this example in fall, August to December, and then again right now it's being taught January through May. And so they had 2 sections fall, and now they have 3 sections of May. There's 2 teachers there who are teaching it. Yeah, Westmore, this one's going to be a little more traditional in the sense of it's a semester course backing health. This is a 9th grade only course at Westmore. Right now there's 1 section fall, 1 section spring. A big priority, there's only 1 teacher there teaching it, is to increase the number of students enrolled in this sort of course. And finally, Terra Nova, they are planning to pilot in next fall. And people are already attending both either the social science ethnic studies or the English ethnic studies professional development. So they're already sending some representatives to get trained in those things, which is great. And I'll make a note about Thornton. I didn't include it formally on the slides. I've been talking to teachers there. I think right now the capacity was not there for some of the folks to try and attend, but they're interested in attending next year. So I think that'll be more of an update for next year from their end. Okay, so this is the juicy part, which I kind of like. It's like what the kids say about all of this, right? So in December, that's where I got to hand out a Google Form survey. I did a few focus groups as well, but a lot of this information that I gave to you all is from that survey. These are actually all anonymous, so people could have said whatever they wanted, just know that. And we gave it to each of our school sites that has been piloting. So that includes Oceana, Jefferson, Westmore. You see here the breakdown that it's largely going to be Oceana kids, then Jefferson, and then Westmore. That makes sense with the number of sections that everyone has. And over here, again, largely it's freshmen, but you see there's several chunks that represent sophomore, junior, senior. So there are a number of them as well that have signed up. This was really interesting. So I know most surveys ask for race, right? We did something different. We asked for ethnicity because that's something we actually talk about in the course. And I think often we don't ask, people that, and we don't really reflect on it. And what we found was super cool, in my opinion. 1/3 of the kids actually wrote down at least 2 or 3 ethnicities, so that they have mixed heritage of some kind. So this could be that they were part Irish and part Vietnamese. This could be that they were Honduran and Nicaraguan, right? Like ethnicities. And so I think what this shows is that it's very important for us to have these conversations on identity. There's a lot of rich culture and identity and just a lot of cool stuff kids are bringing into the classroom, which we can use as assets. Okay, and again, there's also some survey information about gender identification over here. All right, what were students' biggest takeaways? And there were other questions as well. I've highlighted some for you. The survey was very long, and again, I had like about 145 responses or so I combed through them, try to give you some highlights. Obviously, some takeaways were that there's a lot of reading and writing. That's not going to change. That's okay. But I've highlighted some of the other themes. So one theme was empowerment. Another theme was community and empathy. And another one was relevant information. And so what I'm going to highlight for you are the themes around empowerment and then around relevant information. We'll see some other ratings about community later. So here are some word-for-word quotes from the Google survey. And so we see that a lot of students, literally number one, their biggest takeaway is hope, which I think is huge. So again, in a world where, we just discussed, there's a lot of things that are difficult for many people. Many people have to overcome many obstacles. I think that is a really big thing to take away in any class. So I was really affirmed and uplifted hearing that. Another one is that students are getting affirmations about themselves inwardly, right? About their own ethnic identity and being proud of it. Another one I think was the one that's towards the middle there. My biggest takeaway is to start stating my opinions more and to advocate for myself and others. Sometimes it's okay to be vulnerable in class. So I think that whole piece of speaking out and feeling comfortable with your voice, that's also big. And finally, that the last person who has this comment I pulled out, in times of struggle, there will always be times of solidarity and unity to help fight and protect. So I think that this positive messaging and understanding is really critical. Another really big theme was relevant information. And so this is a class which I think often we're hoping that's more engaging for students. And some of these comments show us that it definitely is for some of them. There's definitely a few I'll, again, show in some of our next slides. I think there's a range of emotion around the class. However, one thing that definitely came up is that students were interested about the topics and actually kept thinking about them. So in that first comment, it's the student feeling that things that they were learning about are so important, they told their friends. And so I think that really shows some true engagement and really, deep understandings or at least deep curiosity about something brought up in class, which I think is amazing. Another thing are some of the materials, of course, that students are either viewing or reading in classes, they're engaging with. There's a very interesting Netflix show, Colin in Black and White, and so that's actually one of the things we're showing, and I think a lot of kids are engaging with that. But regardless of that, they're thinking about certain concepts like racism, right, in the classroom. And lastly is this comment here about presentations on our culture. A lot of the teachers are ending Unit 1, that unit on self and identity, with some sort of presentation where students are understanding their own culture, but also sharing about it, their ethnic identity. And so they're listening to other students in addition to exploring and making a presentation about themselves. And this student here said that I felt very heard, knowing I'm not the only one who goes through struggles within family dynamics when it comes to who we are as ethnic people. So building connection. So there's a sense of building connection that is also very strong. And now we have a few ratings for our ethnic studies classes. For example, this first one here shows, did the class help you develop a stronger sense of self, meaning identity, or understand your culture/community better? It ranges from 1, not at all the way to 3, yes, definitely. We see most of the respondents fall into 2 and 3. And here we see, of course, there's always work to do, right? So we see there are some kids in the 1 category, and that's what we're gonna hopefully keep talking about and try to improve upon. Our next question, did the class help you understand other cultures and communities better? We see here there's actually a lot more on the 3 categories, so that was very interesting for me to notice as well. This one, do you feel inspired to learn more about the topics discussed in ethnic studies? Again, largely in the 2 and 3. And finally, this was the other theme that came out a lot in the comments, was students feeling a sense of community, but we also see it reflected in this part of the survey, where again, a majority of students are saying 2 and 3 that they did feel that there's a strong classroom community in their ethnic studies classroom. And so that, I think, is really wonderful. And for those two things, I specifically want to shout out the teachers that are doing all this hard work. So I'm the one coordinating a lot of things on my end. However, Mr. Ombre at Westmore, there's Ms. Santana, Ms. Marini in Jefferson, Mr. Arzaga, Mr. Core, Ms. Polar, and Mr. Rock in Oceana. I think they're doing really great things. These are all their kids. And again, they could have said anything they wanted, and they're saying these really nice and awesome stuff about their ethnic studies classes. And so that, I think, is really lovely for me to hear. I also included a reading list. These are some of the books I may have ordered and distributed to teachers, or we're also talking about perhaps maybe even integrating into the course, or this might be just information for us. Okay, and thank you for listening. So I hope that helped you understand a little more survey-wise about what has been going on in the district this year, if not also last year. And yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions from folks.
Great, I'll open it up to the board, including student trustees, if you have any comments or questions.
I mean, my only comment is I think this is really cool. I wish they had this when we were younger. Growing up in a school where we had multiple ethnicities and races and not really understanding, we were always kind of taught, oh, we're all the same. You don't really talk about those kind of things, underneath our skin, we're all the same. But in reality is we're all very different, and trying to understand that helps us all learn a lot from each other and just the things that we do every day, For instance, having Arabic friends in school growing up, when they would fast, that was something that was hard for us to understand why they did that. And they'd have to tell us in their own terms, and we weren't taught those things. So there was a lot of that communication that we kind of did on our own, but still, you do find out how different you are from everybody else, Also, a couple things too. I was noticing in that one reel where some of the students commented that the class didn't help them kind of identify with themselves. For me, since I'm a mixed race and I was raised by my grandmother, she was Irish, but I'm Mexican Irish, and I didn't get a lot of ethnic background, of my own growing up. So it's hard to try to understand where I'm at ethnically, as a younger person. Now that I'm older, I can kind of do my own research, but when you're being taught something like that, it's hard to kind of grab all that stuff. But I think it's cool that, you're having these courses and this training to kind of help everybody understand where they can kind of reach out and figure that stuff out for their own. So it's really cool.
My daughter goes to Oceana, and so I'm kind of curious, where does ethnic studies fit into the curriculum?
9th grade humanities.
Started this year.
There is another course that is, I'm looking at Rocket, is it like race and membership? Race and membership, society? Yes. That is for, juniors or upperclassmen, I believe, too, that they have taught for a while. But it's just at the 9th grade level of the ethnic studies proper.
But it's not an elective.
Correct. So at Oceana this year, all 9th graders are supposed to take Humanities 9, and that's where they're putting their curriculum in. Yeah.
So so this has been really great to see the genesis of this and how, while we've been on the board and you've been coming to us, giving us updates. So it's been really exciting to see it come to fruition. And it's just a start. And then you came to the Student Advisory Council meeting, and there were a ton of questions they had. I mean, we went long because all the students they had a ton of questions for you. And I know because my daughter graduated from Jeff last year, and she was really bummed that, why didn't they have this yet? But at least there were some courses that touched upon, some of these issues. But when do you, because at Jeff, is it because of the 4x4 that it's, you have to sign up for it? For this?
Yeah, currently that's how the admin are deciding to do it, even for next year. But that may, I mean, we had conversations. It may or may not change in the future, of course. But I think right now that's the best way for them.
I think, but at what point are we making an ethnic studies course? We don't want to just have a course, you know, like you said, we want it to be embedded in all our classes so that we're more attuned and well-rounded and we're raising good people. So at what point are we going to make it a requirement?
So the law.
The law.
Says that it's the graduating class of 2030. And so we don't want to wait for that, obviously, you know, it's far down the line, but we also don't want to like lock ourselves into place on exactly what it has to look like at each school site. It needs to make sense. It needs to fulfill student need. It needs to, as you said, not live in one particular course code. And it also, and I know Usra can speak a little bit more to this, doesn't need to even just be a singular course code. Like there are opportunities for not only it living in other disciplines, but it being a series of courses, you know, just like other disciplines have, you know, sort of continuations.
Yeah, that's one interesting thing that some of the schools are exploring potentially. You know, of course, first priority is getting prepared for that mandate, which is actually going to be fall of 2026. That's when that goes into play. However, there are schools that are really interested in trying to build a pathway so that there is potentially a freshman course, for example, or underclassmen course followed up by an upperclassman course. So I think there's a lot of creative things happening and a lot of really interesting ideas going around. And because this is so new, I think it'll keep evolving. So I'm sure if I come next year, I'll have another update. And then you'll know where that goes.
Yeah, but right now, we're able to build the curriculum. Because I know that on the state level, there was so much debate and just the back and forth on watering down, we call it watering down the curriculum. And I don't want us to be teaching kids something that isn't relevant to them, you know? So I'm just, this is a living thing. That's how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Yeah. I feel like that's how a lot of us are looking at it from the teaching side too.
So I will first say I would to thank all of the teachers for pushing this forward and getting us to the place where we're in, and I'm extremely grateful. So thank you. And to piggyback on what Trustee Tejada said, you know, I am looking for some sort of goal of what this is supposed to be. I am fine, you know, and I'm, you know, it's not our role to like tell you how to get there, but I would like to know where the there is. Like what is there? So Oceana has decided to do the year-long, but what is the goal for all the other schools? Because I do think that they're, you know, I don't want to push schools into doing things that they're not prepared for. So that's not what this comment is. This comment is more about, I want it doesn't matter what school you go to, you're getting a robust ethnic studies program. And in my mind, that is not a semester class. And looking at what our district mission statement is, you know, how do we make that mission statement a reality through this and the other programs that we're going to talk about later. So just getting guidance and direction from you all about like what is the goal, and then having discussion about how do we achieve that. And then my other comment is more, so I struggled about whether I was going to talk about this, but I think I am. We have the local land acknowledgement, and one of the things I do outside the district all the time is that I do want to say all of their names, but I also want local names to be acknowledged. And it bothers me to no end that locally we talk about people who lost their lives to law enforcement outside of the county, but we never mention the people who lost their lives to law enforcement right here. Like our lives should matter here too. So just holding that up somewhere here, because none of those families received any acknowledgement or justice. And I think it's, you know, San Mateo County has some of the worst outcomes, and it's never talked about and discussed in the way it should be talked about and discussed. So, just putting that out there. And I also wanted to say that it really made me happy that we're already going back and getting feedback from students to hear what they have to say about the program, because for me, it's just, I don't want to do something that's not really making an impact or difference. So constantly getting those metrics and data, and if we could continue to do that so that we know as a board too, that would be great. And that's all those are all the comments. And again, just kudos, mission accomplished on looking cute. I just want to pass that, just to say that as well. You did
Well, I
that.
do want to speak to what you said. Thank you so much for the comment about keeping it local and bringing up those examples. I mean, one of the things I love about the books that Usra has on that list is that she put up The Color of Law. And one of my favorite parts about that is that it calls out daily city, you know? And so by having a community responsive model like they've all been working with our consultants, we are bringing in things from our own backyard and topics. And I think that's part of what is really speaking to the students. And I just wanted to also mention in terms of the requirement, I think we do want to be a little careful in the tightrope we walk with the required piece versus the program that we build out, because the requirement does come with credential constraints, and things like that to fulfill certain requirements. Whereas when we are looking towards building this really robust program, we can open it up to English teachers. We can open it up to all of these different subject matters and have it in there. One of the things that they've been working on this year with the English teachers is I'm looking at her because I'm it's got a real fancy name. It's the Ethnic Studies Story Praxis Story Plot.
There we go.
There you go. That's some Scrabble
What is the
words right there,
acronym going to be? I'm excited.
yeah, but it's essentially looking at the plot line of any kind of story and seeing it in terms of struggle, resistance, healing, and evaluating that, and that you can really take any story and evaluate it through this lens and encourage students to do the same. And I was talking with our other TOSA, Lisa Rubin, who's been partnered with Usra in this work, that they do. I just also want to shout them both out because we partner with community responsive education, but I value Usra and Lisa as much, if not more, in terms of the facilitation that they do, their credibility that they have with teachers, and all the hard work they've done over the last 2 years, and they go above and beyond. And what we were talking about is that hey, any book that we adopt from here on out needs to have the teacher propose it with how it fits in this story plot line. Not because, some books will fit it and some books won't. I think all of them will, but we need to be thinking in that lens and when we're adopting all of the materials as we kind of move forward. And so that's how I'm kind of hoping that it lives in this very standardized, clear their way to speak to your point.
Yeah, and I agree with all of that. And I think my point is not about the state requirements. Yeah. It's more about getting from you what the goal is. Mm-hmm. Hearing from you guys what you think the goal is, and is the plan to have a umbrella goal, this is where you all need to end up, the schools, and you can decide how each school gets there, but I just want to know, is there a plan for what is there? Is there a plan for this is where everyone needs to be? And is there a timeline that could be fluid because things happen? We all learned that, like you said, 2021 and 2022, I still write those because we were stuck there for a very long time. It felt like it was forever. And so knowing that, we never know what can happen, but for me, in just holding ourselves accountable and always making sure that we're looking at it, it would be nice to know what the objective is, and then ensuring that we are moving towards the objective.
Sure, I had one comment on that because I think that's a great point. I think it's a little challenging to answer just because, okay, so here's an example. So this past fall, we had the, privilege of going to Cappuccino High School in San Mateo Union. They welcomed us in, meaning myself and the ethnic studies teachers, and we actually got to observe what they have as their program. And I know that they're, for example, building a pilot program. But before we saw it, we didn't even know that thing existed. but now we're having discussions about it. So I think the more we're going to be exposed to different case study, different sites, just different ideas from people of how this could look, and then how would we even get there? Do we have the capacity? I feel like that'll shape, if that makes sense. So I think it's also hard because since we're at the beginning, we're taking in a lot of information, and hopefully we'll continue to do so, and then we can really have like a nice vision. So that's why, yeah, you know, like I'm a planner. I think that'd be amazing if I had that for you, but it's just hard. Yeah, because I think a lot of this is very conceptual too at the moment. So it's kind of like we're trying to have the concrete stuff, you know, with the curriculum, I think, and then that vision will for sure evolve and I think be a little more solidified. And then just to comment on your, you know, hope for more surveys. So yes, so I'm definitely planning on doing a follow-up survey and focus groups in May. Yeah.
Add something to that. So, I don't remember, but I know that it was said here, the idea of not just having ethnic studies being the ethnic studies class. So that's definitely part of our vision.
Yeah.
How that really looks is really hard and a bit amorphous, right? So I just want to speak to that because I think that we do share that same goal. It's not just for this semester you're going to go learn about ethnic studies and you don't think about it for any, you know, rest of the time. In a comprehensive high school, it's harder than, you know, in a middle school class or something where you might have a self-contained classroom and that teacher can weave math learning and science learning, and you know, it's easier when it's that way. It's just more difficult. So I'll share that's one of my goals, you know, but not quite sure how that's going to look just yet.
Because I mean, one of the focuses for me too, like, how long is Westmore going to be okay with just having a semester class?
Correct. Yeah.
You know, how is that going to grow? Because that's like one of our largest schools.
And it needs to be at all of the high schools.
Right.
Yeah. So exactly.
Yeah. And you know, how, like, so it also works for me, like, how often do I check in with you? Like, if I know, like, oh, there's a plan and it's being worked on, then, you know what I'm saying?
I do hear you.
Okay. Thank you.
I think the best part also is that, like I said before, you have a lot of teachers that are very passionate. So I think that's the number one thing that's gonna, for example, that example you just brought up, will move conversations at sites such as Westmore forward. Because I think there's so many invested teachers that I think have begun this process and really want to see it grow. I mean, I'm one of them, so I'll just be there all the time. But yeah, you know. So,
and teachers
so
seeing
we'll
each other,
up.
like those teachers, then it spreads. I've seen that.
And so with that, I mean, when we're talking about the teachers who are interested, are they, and we're already training the English teachers, is the interest cutting across all the different disciplines? If we're starting to look at some of even the STEM teachers, are we starting to see interest even in that area?
That's a really good question. So I think that's going to be a little harder just because I've worked with my cohort of the social studies teachers and then the English teachers. I think what would be really nice as a vision is to move forward to offer some of this pedagogy and philosophy to any teacher regardless of their department. But I think because we have some of this pressure on the side of having this particular requirement filled and then having a quality course of study with student feedback, I think it's hard to gauge right now because of capacity issues, if that makes sense.
No, understand. I think
know.
it speaks to the larger vision, right, of ultimately embedding the ideology within all of our curriculum, right? But clearly, we have to focus on what's in front of us, and that's with the social science, English, humanities type of work. It makes sense, at least from an execution standpoint today.
Yeah, because I think I'll talk about the observation that we did that was super cool at Cappuccino is that they have summer institutes in the sense of, you know, they're doing their own thing, but teachers have different almost threads that they're going in, whereas, you know, maybe there are some that are specifically versed in ethnic studies pedagogy wanting to deepen lens. Some folks from any department just want to know about it, and they have a certain cohort of them going through, you know, so I think they're really creative ways to engage teachers. So I think we can, like, I would love to think about it and put that into practice. But yeah, I think the hard thing is also, like, there's a lot of priorities. And so it's about, okay, what are we prioritizing now versus, like, near future versus, you know.
Yeah.
Given where we were before and where we are today with the feedback that you receive from the students, I mean, it's powerful. I got emotional reading those responses the first time I went through because clearly the material really touched their minds, touched their hearts. You know, they were able to identify with who they or begin to identify with who they are, which is really a cool thing, and it really is about educating the whole child, right? It's, we're touching their minds, but we're touching their hearts, and they really start to get it. It's really powerful, and so kudos to you and all the staff for really making this happen. And I was also want to comment on just the course proposal itself, the level of detail in the course proposal. And to the different types of activities that you're recommending that they be able to do. So, to be able to touch on some specific technical and presentation skills. I saw you drop in the Pecha Kucha, for example, which was pretty darn cool. That would be amazing to have students talk about themselves through that type of presentation. So really just the thoughtfulness behind everything and the intentionality within the course itself is really well done.
Yeah, that took a lot of sweat and tears. Yeah, a long process for that.
Yeah.
Would you share with them, you shared with me passing in the hallway one day about when you were doing the student interviews and how sort of touched you were about how they were speaking about their teachers? Do you remember that comment that you shared? I just thought it was really sweet.
Yeah, it was actually, so Mr. Ombre, Mr. Arzaga, so Westmore and then at Oceana were kind enough to let me in. I was going to do a focus group at Jefferson, but then I got sick with the flu, so that didn't happen. Anyway, that's fine. The kids were so precious. So I had small groups of maybe about 5, and for each of those courses, they happened to be freshmen, right? And so some of those kids echoed a lot of what was actually said in some of these comments. So a lot of them were talking about community, that they really appreciated that project at the end of the identity unit particularly, and that they all really liked how their teachers participated in the activities. So the teachers are also doing this. So that's one of our intentional focuses, is that if you want the kids to be vulnerable, right, you model your vulnerability, but also you share about yourself. That's how you really build connection and empathy. And so the teachers are also sharing about their own identity, perhaps their struggles. And I think many students really, really appreciated it. So they had the kindest things to say. And, I was also looking for some critical feedback, right? And so, I just asked that. And so they were very reluctant to give it to me. Yeah, because I think they were just so sweet. And I thought so highly of their teacher. I just thought it was really cute. So it was very nice. They're like, well, maybe, we know it's his first time doing it.
It's just the first year they're doing it.
That's so cute.
They're trying so hard.
Yeah. I thought that was really,
Yeah, it was very cute.
that doesn't always happen.
Yes,
So-
no, that's fantastic.
And one last time, what's the name of the program that you're calling this thing for the English teachers? The ethnic
Praxis,
studies.
the what? The ethnic-
What? Praxis?
Praxis story plot.
Okay.
It's a framework.
Okay,
So
all
that's
right,
the framework.
that's cool, and kudos to you guys for also dropping praxis into the board meeting.
That's the one word that I remember from it. I'm like, praxis is somewhere in there because it's one of the few times I get to use it in a sentence.
Yes.
Yeah, very fancy, praxis.
Any other
But yeah, I know you said it, but I was wondering what it's going to look like at Terra Nova next fall, because I know you said that it's going to be implemented next fall there.
Yeah, so I think they're still talking about it. I don't think a final decision has been made. However, I do know that they're really committed to piloting it next year, and that's like a top priority. So I know that one of the teachers is coming to the social science meetings, 2 of them are coming to the English meetings. So I know that it'll be integrated in some of the English coursework, but also there will be a standalone. I think I just can't talk to like how they scheduled it because they're still doing all their scheduling, but yeah.
I think there definitely has been, because some of the books up there I read in my English classes this year, so I think that there has been some implementation in terms of books read.
Yeah, and we're excited because some of the teachers that are coming from there are definitely, talking about how to even continue revamping things, which is awesome, so.
Any more comments or questions for presenters? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you
Job
so
well
much for your
done.
hard work. Yes, thank you.
All right. 15A2, LCAP goal number 3, equity update. Ms. Baca.
President Lee, good evening, members of the board. Tonight, I'll be presenting on the equity update, which is really LCAP Goal 3. It has many parts to it, and one of the parts is already presented earlier, so yay, I don't have to do that. Thank you. But throughout the presentation, Superintendent Presta will be chiming in as her passion.
She's giving me the okay.
About this work has influenced a lot of our strategies. And so, Ms. Presta, feel free to chime in.
So I'm not butting in if I chime in, but she's got it.
So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to reflect and discuss the evolution of equity here in our district. And as you know, a lot of my slide themes has like meaning. So you'll see a lot of roads and forks and barriers and things like that because this is a journey. Doesn't end. We're going to continue to work on it forever and ever and make things better. But for this presentation, I'm going to use 2018 kind of like as a starting point, 1819, because that was when the equity audit by EdTrust West was first published. And that was also the first year that I started in this position. And then 5 years later, 22, 23, where we are right now. And just please keep in mind that in between that, there's this really annoying barrier that kind of, pause on a lot of things, which is COVID, of course. And so tonight I'll be covering there are 5 main topics in this presentation, but I will not be covering the resources because those are just all data for your own reference. So I'll be spending some time talking about overview of equity, our LCAP equity goals, the outcomes, and next steps. So equity in education overview. Most of you probably have seen that image with the 3 kids trying to watch baseball, and then there's the short, medium, tall person. The shortest one got like 2 blocks, and then the tall one didn't get any because this person can already see. Well, I'm that, the short one that needed 2 blocks, which really means that we don't get everything equally because we all have differences in needs. And that is really, what equity is. It's not equality. We don't get the same exact things because kids are offered different things depending on what is needed. However, there are challenges to equity. The historical inequities that has been pervasive throughout our educational system. And also there are some that are resistant to the change because they don't either see why they need to change because the system has already benefited them. And some just refuse to just completely change. There's also implicit bias playing in there, stereotypes, and institutional racism. So what actions can we do to help create this equity? We really need to examine and change our policies and practices to provide access and opportunity. We have been shifting our resources to meet the needs of the students that are, most at risk, and we need to continue that. We also need to build positive relationships with all of our educational partners because we cannot do this alone. We need each other. And more importantly, we really need to start examining ourselves and questioning ourselves and shift our mindset and models. So why do equity gaps exist? So current and historical educational initiatives and policy with unchanged educational practices and mindset creates a perpetuation of this equity gap. But sometimes, again, this is really hard to see because we are so in it. So there's this article that many of you have read, The Water of Systems Change, where it has a quote about the 2 fish. Basically, one of the fish said, how's the water? And then the other fish said, well, what is water? And so we really need to make the invisible visible because we are so in it. We need to really start questioning and examining and looking at everything that we do as an educational system. So as a system, there are 6 conditions of system change. So there's the top part, as you can see, the structural change, which are the explicit things, which are our policies and practice and our resources. And most of the time we work on that upper level. However, what's more important in system change is to recognize that power dynamics, build connections with our educational partners, and also, again, to look at ourselves and see, are we contributing to the inequities of the system? So equity journey, again, 2018, 2019. So this work actually even started before that in 17, 18 because former Superintendent Irish and I received an email from the county office inviting us to attend an equity forum facilitated by EdTrust West. And there we heard Pedro Noguera, Tyrone Howard, and also many districts and told us what they were doing to advance equity. And so that's when we heard about the equity audit. So we partnered up with them, and then 17, 18, they did like a lot of data collection. This equity audit was published in the fall of 2018, and then groups of people, a steering committee and a working committee, worked on a blueprint on what can we do to improve the outcomes of our students. And on top of that, they also did an analysis for our math assignments to look at the type of rigor that our students are getting in their math assignments. They're comparing Math Course 1, and at that time, we had Math Course 1 Bridge just to make sure that we are, equitable in our classes. That year also was the first year when President Lee and Vice President Salahuddin attended the state's CSBA Equity Network. The following year, our administrators received training on LGBTQ+, and also from that, we formed an ad hoc committee. Now, the Equity Network work continued on through the San Mateo County School Boards Association. So school board members across the county with district leaders attended this and really learned about this work. And then we wanted to bring that district-wide, and so we had a plan, series of meetings for us to meet, and we were only able to meet twice because of COVID. And so right after that, this committee, basically stalled. That fall of 2020, though, even though we were at home, there was an equity statement subcommittee that gathered together to start drafting our equity statement. So work was still done. In 2020, 2021, we were in distance learning. That was the first time when district-wide, our staff heard the topic of racial equity as a district. So we had Nicole Anderson come in and speak to everybody and all staff members. In addition, Gender Spectrum provided a 2-session training for all of our staff, one during the Welcome Back Day and then a follow-up at each of the school sites. And then that year too, there were a series of board study sessions, and on April 20, 2021, for that, because it's Emma's birthday, 420, the equity statement was adopted. Then in 21-22, our administrators received training from Courageous Conversation. That was the very first time that we partnered up with them. Ethnic Studies curriculum development started, Grading for Equity PD started, and also the professional learning community for Universal Design for Learning also started. So all of the work in 21-22 is actually continuing in 22-23. But here are the new things that happened this year. So all of our administrators have been trained to with Toby Scruggs' on Brene Brown's Dare to Lead. I'll talk more about that in the next few slides. Also, during our welcome back, we had 2 keynotes who talked about race and equity, and that was Toby Scruggs and Luis Versales. In addition, the last PD day for the staff, all of our staff members, classified and certificated, receive a training on Introduction to Courageous Conversations so that they are aware that we are working on this. At the same time, our site administrators and district administrators started the LEADS training series that we'll talk about in a little bit. And also, the district equity leadership team met this year. And in addition, some LGBTQ+ systems and supports were put in place. So, this is our equity statement, and in our equity journey, our North Star is this equity statement. So It basically embodies our commitment to engaging, educating, and empowering all students with an intentional focus on those underserved, inadequately served, or disenfranchised by educational institutions and systems, eliminating disparities in educational outcomes. So that statement was the inspiration for LCAP goal number 3. In LCAP goal number 3, there are 4 things listed here, but there are actually 5 things in our LCAP, and the 5th one is about significant disproportionality, but a lot of those strategies are already embedded either in these actions or some other actions throughout the LCAP. So I'll start with anti-racism education and training. And as you all know, race has been one of the consistent predictors of success in our educational system. And that's why we prioritize anti-racism education and training. So we're currently working with Courageous Conversation to guide this work. Courageous Conversation, again, it's a formal structure or protocol and a way to engage in this type of dialogue, because it's very, very hard to talk to other people about race, and people need the tools in order to do that. So it uses the compass to recognize where we are in the quadrants as we enter in this could be uncomfortable conversation. So are you in the believing, the thinking, the feeling, and the acting? And the goal really is try to center yourself before you can really have this meaningful dialogue with the other person. Otherwise, you may feel dysregulated and the conversation will just go nowhere. In addition to that, it ties in with 4 agreements to guide this difficult dialogue. Then finally, it has these conditions that are actually very, very sequential and on purpose. Because what happens is you kind of gauge yourself on where you are in this conversation. So one of the agreements says, the non-closure, accept non-closure, because sometimes you may have to take a pause and say, I can't have this conversation right now and I'm not ready, and let's come back and have this discussion again. So these conditions, basically the first 2, is just kind of like testing the waters to see if we can have this engaging conversation, and it really centers on yourself and then your story, just as like what ethnic studies is. And then the second 2 conditions talk about multiple perspective through mindful inquiry. So what is your perspective? Let me hear you. Here's mine and here's yours. And the last 2 one is really about deepening the conversation where people explore the issues of white privilege and whiteness as a property. And so as you can see, it gets really, really, it could be uncomfortable, and that is why sometimes you have to go back and forth and kind of know where you are if you are able to have this discussion at that time. Yes.
Trying to not interject, and you're being super comprehensive. I want to make one note before we move to the next slide. So we are, really what we learned is that we need to be talking about race on a consistent basis. We need, and we started, there's a desire, I think all of us want to move very quick. We want to get so much done and move really quickly. And we've been reminded that we needed to sort of start with really grounding the administrators in the district with this learning and get a level of comfort so that we can move forward with the rest of the staff. And that was probably the hardest part for me, to not bring all this stuff to every single person right away. So we've been thoughtful about that, and we've spent 2 solid years with the administrators. And Corinne's gonna tell us more about the leads and the DELT work. But this work, I'm now seeing roots really take hold with between the Courageous Conversation training and the Dare to Lead training from Tovi, which Tovi Scruggs Hussein, who does the Brene Brown Dare to Lead training, it's Dare to Lead training, and she's also somebody who is very gifted at working with race topics and helping people. So it's really a double gift that she brings. So we now, I think, are at a space, so we'll learn more about the Courageous Conversation training, but we're now at a space where we're going to be moving forward at the end of this year to spreading it to teams at the sites. But I just kind of want to emphasize that there's been a lot of work at the leadership level to get this level of comfort, and I think we're there now. So
Thank you for saying that, because the quote here by John Cotter basically says, no matter how capable or dedicated the staff groups, without strong line leaders, never achieve the power that is required to achieve results. Efforts that don't have a powerful enough guiding coalition can make apparent progress for a while, but sooner or later, the opposition gathers itself together and stops the change. And that's why we were very intentional in supporting our leaders first in rolling out this work. So here's a little graphic on how the training has gone and will go. So it starts with the core of the Guiding Coalition, which is the District Equity Leadership Team. Consists of our executive cabinet members, superintendent, associate and deputy superintendent, and then director of human resources. And our goal is basically consult with Courageous Conversation and each other and develop like some systems where we can look at policies and practices to make sure that what we are doing and what we are implementing helps achieve our equity goal. Currently, we are working on our Equity Lens tool that I will be sharing in a little bit. So again, we started working with as a DELT in 21-22. It's continuing this year, and then we'll continue again for the following year. Now, a bigger group, while DELT is happening, there's also LEADS happening. And LEADS, Leadership for Racial Equity, consists of our vice principals, directors, and executive cabinet. And it's a series of training sessions, and the topics are listed there, and also the time frame that it was being offered. So basically, we started in August 2022, and we will finish in August 2023. And parallel to that, right? Yes, go ahead.
I notice I'm scrolling through the attachment in the board agenda. We've updated it to put some times and dates because we realized that we didn't have those. So as I'm scrolling here, I'm like, wait, the dates aren't there. We will update it in the agenda so that the public can have access to that too. But if you notice, Ms. Baca added when everything has happened or is happening.
And so again, the work doesn't stop, with us and the administrators, and we want to make sure that this happens at the school site level. And so the goal is for each of the school site to have an E-team or an equity team. And it consists of about 8 individuals that will help train and provide professional development about this work. They will receive training from Courageous Conversation, but in between the training, they also will have some assignments that they need to do at their school site in order to continue this work. So those are some of the examples that they will be doing: some staff meeting facilitation, some literature circles, data analysis, and things like that. So again, that's what happens at the school site level. And then and that training happens starting in June of 2023 all the way through June of 2024. And then we want to, of course, expand it with our students also. So the following year, we will be convening a group of students, a multi-group of students, to provide leadership opportunities and for them to voice their leadership on this work. So we will be forming the Students Organized Against Racism. So that is our work with Courageous Conversation. I believe in May, Courtney Caldwell will be here to also do a board study session on this. So having a conversation about race requires brave leaders and courageous cultures. And that is why we had partnered with Toby Scruggs Hussein, who trained our leaders in Dare to Lead. And it is a 24-hour training. And we basically explored how to listen with empathy, our vulnerability, that we must choose courage over comfort, and live in our values. And so this is really teaching us to really be more courageous and step up. And those are some of the leadership commitments that we have signed and attested, and we had our partners to make sure that we are committing to those commitments. So here are some of the Dare to Lead testimonials by our administrators, just for you to view. And then the next part, so I'm going to move on to the next action, which is really grading practices. So with Joe Feldman really said it best when he said, are we, by using, supporting, and not interrogating traditional practices, accessories to the inequities in our school? So grading, traditional grading has been one of the major perpetuators, is that even a word, of inequities in our school. And so traditional grading really does not reflect accurate learning. Like if you look at a grade book, you will see, homework, extra credit, conduct, all sorts of things. So it's not really accurate because it doesn't reflect the true learning of students. Traditional grading could also be biased. It could be biased towards those who have more resources or could have, could afford tutors. And so the goal for this work is, again, to remove that bias from grading. As far as another thing about traditional grading is that sometimes it's very off-putting and students get depressed with the grades that they get, and they feel like, they can amount to nothing and they feel hopeless. And so what we're trying to do is be more really, motivational and that bring hope. Like, again, I'm going to bring back, to what Asra said. We want our students to feel hope. And so the grading for equity pillars is that they are accurate, bias resistant, and motivational. How do they do that? So there are there are 11 equitable grading practices that our teachers have been exploring. So as an example, do not assign extra credit, avoid the zeros, using a 4-point scale instead of the traditional scale. So what does that look like for JUHSD? So in a typical year, and this is our second year, so last year we started out with Joe Feldman doing an overview of the work through Zoom, and it was open to everybody, all of our teachers and staff. And after he gave the overview, he asked for basically participants, like, who wants to be a part of this professional learning? And it's not the typical professional learning that you get, because what they actually get to do is try things out, reflect, and see how they can make it better. They get a coach, and then they get really, really, support and collaboration from one another. So once they've identified that they want to be a part of this cohort, there's a 2-day kickoff where they learn about the equitable ways of grading. At the end of the second day, they have to choose one of those practices. Let's say they want to accept late work or do redos or retakes. So they commit to that, and then they apply that in one of their classes or all of their classes. It really is up to them. Throughout that process, they get a coach that has actually gone through this whole entire training, and it's, it could be from all over the United States. So they get a coaching session with their coach, and then after that, I believe it's about basically of this whole one cycle, they attend a workshop. And then in that workshop, all of the teachers in this cohort basically talk about their experiences, what went well, what could have been improved. And then they also learn more in-depth grading for equity practices. And then at the end of that workshop, they could choose another grading practice, or they could continue with the grading practice that they tried the first time. And then they do that for 4 cycles throughout the year. One of the things outside of that is that Crescendo Group, where Joe Feldman is the CEO, they also do student interviews. So last year, they interviewed students from Jefferson High School in Terra Nova, and this year they interviewed students from Westmore and Oceana and just talked about their sentiments about grading and how it could be improved. And from that statement, and those statements, of course, they're anonymous, are shared with the teachers in one of the workshops. And it's quite powerful because it is actually the teachers that read these statements out loud. And, and it's, some of them are, just really heart-wrenching. This year, we are doing something, another thing different is that we're also going to have a caregiver information session, because with this work, as we expand, because right now we only have 2 cohorts, about 30 teachers, and our goal is really to expand this district-wide. We're going to need the support of our families because this is a complete change from what it was before. And so right now, tentatively, it's scheduled for March 16th, but it may change. But our plan is to, again, inform our parents and invite our parents and guardians about this work. Here are some of the examples of what our teachers chose as their action research plan. As you can see, the most popular one is the 0 to 4 or the 50 to 100 grading scale, and also using proficiency rubrics. And those are some of the teacher voices. So I'm just going to share the first one. As it said, I think this just showed me that some of my perceived notions should be examined and challenged a bit in order to make progress in improving myself as an educator. And so I really appreciate that there's a lot of reflection and thinking about, our traditional ways of grading is not working. The next action is supporting LGBTQ plus students. So Melissa and her team had developed a series of these safeguards that were shared with our staff members. So for instance, there was a system on how we would protect the students' names in our student information system. She has done screencasts to make sure that people understand what needs to be done. And this is constantly being revisited and updated. Also, as you can see, we have our gender neutral restrooms. And again, it is not perfect, but we're continuing to improve that. We're celebrating, Pride Month, Transgender Day, and also our students are invited to the YAS conference. I think it's the Youth Advisory Council. I'm not really sure what those, YAS, I don't know, something like that. And then,
Social Summit.
Yep, Social Summit. And our Progress Pride flag was also flown throughout the summer. So outcomes and impacts, I've broken this down by teaching and learning and human resources and things like that. And as you can see, we've done so much since we've started this work. We now have a more defined scope and sequence for English, math, and social science. We heard about ethnic studies. We have community responsive novels in English, and it's just going to get better. Our textbook adoption rubric now considers representation in the textbooks so that our students can see themselves. We've improved our progress monitoring for students learning English and students with IEP. We've increased our dual enrollment courses, and before our credit recovery classes for summer school were not A through G, but now they are A through G, and also our after-school classes are A through G through Apex. CTE courses that are A through G have increased along with pathways for CTE. Math Course 2 Bridge is no longer offered. We now offered an alternative to Math Course 3, which is data science. And on the right-hand side, I'd mentioned all of the, the grading for equity, universal design for learning, constructing meaning. And also one of the big things that came out of this is really looking at the structures of our school. So that's when flex time and 4x4 and advisory were put in place in, outside of Oceana. We've increased our co-teaching sections. Thornton High School's referral process has been revised, and our instructional coaching sections have increased. So for climate and community, as best we know, we have our solution matrix. We've also improved our alternative to suspension through brief intervention for substance use. We have gender-neutral restrooms, increased wellness staff, and then we also provide intern supervision. Newsletters being sent out on a regular basis. There's caregiver information nights. So as an example, in April, there will be an immigration resource night that will be facilitated by our wellness team. And I believe there's also one coming up that we are working with Jefferson Elementary School District also. So that has been happening. We have attendance task force, and I mentioned earlier procedures for protecting the identity of transgender non-binary students, improve EL newcomer intake process. So a lot of this you've heard from our principals and previous presentations too. Our board meeting right now is being interpreted in Spanish, and I always have to remind myself to speak slowly to help the interpreter. I hope I'm speaking slowly enough, Noemi. There's the superintendent weekly communication regularly, not just to staff, but also the community. We have our family liaisons, our bilingual paraprofessionals, and then our staff doing book studies, which is really cool. We've done, UDL, grading for equity, white fragility, courageous conversation, and then school climate committees. For staffing and human resources, I don't know where Ms. Lujan is hiding right now.
She doesn't want to be in the camera.
So thank you to her. We've had interview questions on how they feel about their commitment to equity. We partner with Work Wider, who will, kind of help us recruit staff of color. Also, there's, personalized onboarding support. So before it was more of like, an email, a phone call, or, just like basically an email, here it is, here's what you need to fill out. Now there's a lot more personalized support. Again, PD that we talked about. The other thing that we have done is that for our substitute custodians and substitute paraprofessional staff, we have removed their testing barriers. So before they have to take this, exam. And so there are several things that, was it completely removed? The testing?
Substitutes.
Yep. And then, and so we're doing that. And also, we're supporting our classified staff with pathways to bachelor degrees. And then, of course, our staff housing as a recruitment tool. None of that could be done without Ms. Van Raphorst. So basically, all of this is really our area of reallocating resources for this work.
You should take credit for that as well, Ms. Baca. You do a lot of that budget allocation.
And then this is just a data summary because what I wanted to see was okay, we're doing all of that. What does that really look like in terms of student outcomes? And, some we're doing really, really well, some we've slid backwards, and I don't, really know if it's caused by equity work or not, maybe or maybe not. But what I wanted to see was, where are we? And can we continue measuring this and looking at the breakdown in, ethnicity to see if what we are doing are really making a difference? Sometimes I'm going to be honest, it feels like it's not, because I still see the same results for suspension, for chronic absenteeism, and sometimes I want to say I give up, but I can't, because this is such an important work. And there's been, COVID has really put a lot of, damper on all of the things that we do. And again, like what I mentioned earlier, our equity statement is our North Star. We gotta keep working on this because we have hundreds and hundreds of years of historical inequities. We're in year 5 or so, and we need, people like us that will move this work forward. So for academics, we've reduced the gap for grad rate and A through G rate, which is really, really awesome. Same thing for our students learning English, and also our students with disabilities. However, and this is actually the first thing that I've looked at this, which is really interesting because we now have the results from National Student Clearinghouse from class of 2018. And look at how they did and whether they graduated in 4 years and whether they persisted. So with this, looking at, just Hispanic and African American, they have the lowest college going rate and lowest college persistence rate. So that is something to track. And again, for behavior and attendance, we've reduced disproportionality for our Hispanic and Pacific Islanders group, but for our African Americans, it has increased. Chronic absenteeism, again, it's been a challenge because of COVID. And as heard from our student of the month tonight, there's just been a lot of things that is happening at home that could contribute, that may have contributed to the chronic absenteeism. And I also looked at the Healthy Kids survey, and the question was, are students feeling safe or very safe at school? And there is a downward trend. And again, it could be because of what's happening right now locally and what's happening to us nationally and globally. So again, this work just needs to continue. And I'm very, very grateful for Ms. Presta and her passion about this. Ms. Presta.
Thanks. Thank you. I just want to say, when Ms. Baca put this slide together, we have a lot of conversations about these topics all the time. But it can feel, like she said, disheartening when you don't see what you want to see. And we've been doing this work for a long time, like in this district, in different districts. And while it can feel disheartening, I think we don't let it hinder us. In fact, I think it lights a fire under us even a little bit more, because we want to see trends, whichever data point we're looking at, we want the trends to be going in the right direction. And in one of the many conversations that I have with Ms. Baca about this, she said something that I thought was really a great way of putting it. She said, we're looking at the water here. So, we have to call out even the data that doesn't look good, even the things that aren't looking the way we want them to look, so that we, so that we're examining the water that we're swimming in, essentially. And so I wanted to mention that. Like, it's not always the data we want to see, but I don't feel at all hindered. I don't feel at all like, oh, well, this isn't working. I feel like, no, like, keep on.
And I think, like Ms. Baca said, we're trying to undo a long history of inequity, so it's going to take time.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And I think it's more than just at school too. I think this has to happen in the house. With, I mean, it starts, I mean, this is a good starting point, but I mean, it has to continue at home.
Yeah, well, it's a society that
Right,
we're
with
in.
family, yeah.
Our whole society.
That's the challenge, is keeping it consistent.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Last
mention.
slide, just the next step. We're continuing what we are doing. One of the things that we really would like to do is that's different. We haven't really posted a lot of the things that we've done on our website, and we've done a lot. And so we'll be working with Mr. Warden to basically, help us see, because sometimes when you're feeling down, you just got to look back. It's like, look at where you were and look at where you are now. And so that will kind of help guide us in moving forward. The other big thing is that we as a district really need to improve our data literacy, because if we're going to address these changes, we need to learn how to look at data and multiple measures of data. And it's not just the big data. It could be, it's the little things that happen in your classroom. Sometimes people feel so overwhelmed with these CASP and this dashboard, when it could be just as simple of an exit ticket. So our MTSS crew is working on that. We're working on a website. We're working on training staff to improve our data literacy district-wide. So with that, I forgot about this thing.
Come on now.
Oh,
This is
no.
our
Here's the other big thing.
exciting work.
Very exciting. It's an equity lens tool that there are sets of questions that we're going to be asking ourselves and each other when we look at policies, practice, and programs. We want to make sure that the voices are heard from the other perspective. We want to make sure that they're represented. We want to make sure that how we communicate this is clear. So there's a whole bunch of things that, we'll be asking ourselves as we look at policies and practice. Ms. Basuino gave a great example that one of the things that we're using this for is dress code. And also we will be looking at this, our athletic eligibility, all of those things that we are starting to look at using this equity lens tool. This is not perfect yet, and we're going to get feedback. And so starting next week, Ms. Preston and I will be going to the school sites in person. We'll be offering Zoom sessions also to get feedback. And then we'll also gather feedback from you. And then we're going to revise it as needed and then adopt it for our district. There's a lot of buzzwords in here, I understand. And so one of the things that we will be doing is like definitions and instructions. I'm also thinking of creating like a screencast so that it is on our website to help people understand what this is.
And I just want to say this, so thank you to Ms. Baca for creating the making it really pretty. And thank you to the executive cabinet. We worked with Courtney Caldwell from Courageous Conversation. She came in our DELT training, in our DELT workshops, basically. She's worked with us, I don't know, many hours. And we did hours of work with each other, with Courtney not there. We looked at some samples that from other organizations and use that as a starting place, but this is really something that is our own. So a lot of work at the executive cabinet, district executive leadership team level went into this tool. And we want to use it throughout the district once it's perfect, right? Or, I guess probably it's never going to be perfect. But we want this to be something that can be used by students on their site, by principals and, teachers, and by us and by the board looking at, we want it to be able to be usable. So to that end, we are going to talk. So this this isn't the final product. We probably should have put draft across this. So, there will very likely be changes, but I'm super proud of us because it's not easy to do this work. And but it makes it, just as I'm proud of the board's work on the equity statement, that wasn't easy work. It wasn't like you just sort of sat down and, knocked it out in an hour. Something that you have to go back to and you have to go back to. And so anyway, I just wanted to say that I'm really thankful to the executive cabinet for their work.
All right. Opening it up to the board for feedback, comments, questions.
I have a question. Toward the end there, you mentioned people who may have an alternate viewpoint. Is that what it was? That's not the words you used. But I think you might have mentioned an other side.
Like the underrepresented groups that are usually not heard. That's what we want to get feedback from.
Is that what you're referring to?
That's what I understand. I understand. Thank you.
I can go. So thank you. I know this has been a huge lift, and I'm really grateful for the work that everyone has been doing. And thank you, Ms. Baca, for everything important in the champion, and you've been a fantastic champion for this work. So I'm excited. I mean, I think I understand the depression and frustration. You know what I mean? Like, I understand it, as growing up as a person of color through my whole life and then being a board member on this side, And the thing that keeps me going is my kids, and eventually having a point and getting to a point in time where you don't have to think about the things that I had to think about, or think like you have to be a school board member, in order. So to talk about progress, Ms. Basuino knows, I mean, when I first started on the school board, we couldn't have had this conversation. So to be able to be frank and have these conversations is progress. I had a really good conversation with Superintendent Presta about how I was feeling. And I have not been able to have that type of conversation with the superintendent in my entire time of being a board member. So, that's progress. And I have to, my kids always do this because I will be at home and my kids will tell me, Mom, remember when, remember the time? So I don't want us to get frustrated and burnt out of the work and remember that we are making progress while at the same time still being open to challenge ourselves on the work that needs to be done. And just grounding the things that I say in constant acknowledgement of who you all are and what you bring and the amazing work that you've done. So for me, when something goes wrong, it's not a reflection on you. The thing that I'm looking at is how we respond. And so I know that's the part for me that gets frustrating sometimes is, how do we get to a place where we're okay with, and we're getting there, but it's hard because I defend, when things happen and people come to me with complaints, I have to stop myself from initially defending the district. When a parent or someone will come to me and talk about something we're doing wrong, during COVID, I lost friends because I was, I did defense. And I think doing some other things, if I could go back in time, I am something that, this is directed at myself too, in representing the district, there are times that I wish I had gone back to and not been so defensive. And really just had a more empathetic lens and heard the person more before I jumped to, well, we're doing this and we're doing that, and we're trying. And so I think looking at the power and privilege, and that's, that is looking at my own power and privilege, and that is a huge thing that I can do. I can just shut a whole thing down when somebody comes to me and talk about something because I'm a school board member and people, it's hard to come up and have a complaint against me, and then when I immediately jump in defense mode, it's kind of a walk away. So looking at instances of what's happening on our campuses, and, I know that there are issues with students feeling like they don't belong because they're part of the LGBTQ community, because they're part of other significant subgroups. And how do we make sure that all of these things that we are doing are trickling down to them? And it's going to take some time. And I'm just wondering, how do we measure that? What are we doing to get a ground, a baseline, and then see if things are effective and moving forward and really leaning into students and student voice? And then COVID destroyed the community group that we had. That was a really strong group, and seeing if we can try to bring that back. Because they were really engaged in an active group because they wanted to see change and also could feel that we were open to it. So seeing if we could bring that community group back as another place to have conversation and get feedback, and then continue to look at policy. I think we started the policy work with looking at policy because what do we do? We get shocked. What do we do when we find out that somebody who works here is blatantly racist? What do we do? Do we have policy to fall back on? What do we do when certain things present themselves? Because I think it's so hard to have these conversations in the Bay Area. We really don't want to be perceived as these things. And so when these things happen, it's really hard for us to it's really easy for us to kind of gloss over and not want it to be true instead of dealing with things directly and head on. And if we had policy and things to fall back on, I think that would be helpful. And then lastly, it's just knowing that for me that I am fully supportive of the work that you all are doing, and that I am really grateful for the work that you are doing. And I know it's hard, but I believe that we can do it. We've done so much in a district that's so small and the resources that we have, but I'm always heartened by we stay student-centered and student-focused. In that, I'm finally seeing, I'm filled with hope. Like, this presentation fills me with hope. And I know it's frustrating, but just to be able to talk about and say these things to me is like, that's the pathway. Like, being able to acknowledge and have the conversation, that to me is some of the biggest hurdle. So thank you for everything that you're doing. And, I'm here to support in any way that I can.
Feel you. Thank you so much for all of your hard work. And I grew up in this district. I went to Jeff in the 70s and 80s, and I will admit, when my son was old enough to go to high school, we did not even tour Jeff. Jeff was not going to be an option for him because at the time I felt ashamed that I always felt less than at Jeff. There was that reputation that followed you everywhere. I was salutatorian. And I'd meet kids from the South Peninsula, and they'd go, well, at Jeff. And, and it's hard for me to admit this, but when But with all the work that we'd been doing as you know, in my time on the board, all the work that we'd been doing, and I never felt like I really didn't know there was a district that took care of us when I was at Jeff, you know? I thought we was just us. And we had our rivalries with ceremony and, you know, but I, you know, and the teachers are very, very insular as well, you know? But when it came down to when my daughter was deciding between Jeff and Westmore, I left it up to her, and I was overjoyed she picked Jeff. And she flourished there. And I mean, it's one of the things I'm most ashamed of, that as a school board member, I did not want my child to go to one of our schools because I had a bias because of how I felt growing up there. Even though I felt I got a great education, I never felt good enough. But look at the work that we're doing. Look at the work it's progress, not perfection. When you're dismantling a system, you can't do it overnight. I don't know if it's going to happen in our lifetime, but I know that we're making ground. You know, we're getting there. So when you get frustrated, I get it. I have been in a perpetual state of mourning because of all the losses I've had. And I struggle with my wellness. And there may be, maybe in the last 6 months, might have been 2 or 3 times when in one moment, I'll say, God, I feel good. I feel good right now. And I'm amazed that I feel good. And then it'll go away. But that's progress. Because a few months before, I was not good. Look at the strides, what we're making. I am so proud of our district, and I'm so thankful for all the work that you're doing, Ms. Presta. I mean, for us, equity is not a buzzword. It's change. We are really rolling it out. And we're not going to see it, we're seeing progress. We're not going to get it all overnight. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your hard work and your dedication.
Thank you for the presentation. And thank you for connecting the equity dots for me. You know, I mean, we've been hearing so much about all the different things, and, you know, in the recap, we're in the board meetings about, you know, this training for administrators, this training for staff, et cetera. And sometimes I'm thinking, all right, does it all make sense? And finally, right here, especially looking at slides 7 and 8, where you put down the timeline of the equity journey. And I still remember, you know, when Palima and I were sitting in the CSBA conference room with, you know, a handful of other districts, and suddenly realizing, oh man, there's a lot that we've got to learn, and that we want the rest of the board to learn, and that we want our leadership team to learn. And then to see other board members from other districts feeling the same way. It's up for a handful who decided this is too uncomfortable for me, I can't be here. And we could have easily been that, but we weren't. We decided to go through this battle because we see that 85% of our students are students of color. And it's so important for us to represent them well and to educate them well, and to let them understand that they are important, and that we want them to be the ones to ultimately dismantle the systems that we're trying to do. We're teaching them how to do this. And it's powerful, again, going back to the ethnic studies presentation and the comments from the students about how important that class has been for them so far. And then to read what the teachers are saying about just what grading for equity has meant to them. It's all connected. And it's incredible to see the journey we've taken. I still remember when we were talking about what we had learned at CSBA at one of the convocations, and there was these blank stares in the Terra Nova Theater from staff. What are these two knuckleheads thinking? You know, what are they saying? And to where we are now, the fact that we've got the executive cabinet all unified with the board, and that there's groups of staff throughout that are unified with executive cabinet and with us, and the fact that the next step is really the larger district. And it's uncomfortable for a lot of people. It was uncomfortable for me, and that's okay. You know, it's okay for all of us to feel a lot of discomfort and to feel like we're not doing enough, and to feel like, oh man, I still have to learn that and I screwed that up. That's okay. We have created a safe space in the boardroom. We've created safe spaces in our offices. We're creating safe spaces in our classrooms. This whole district's a safe space. Let's keep it that way. Let's do that. I love that. So thank you. I'm ready to get off my soapbox now.
That's what school board meetings are for.
I know. Anything else that anybody else wants to add?
I mean, I didn't have a lot to say. I mean, for me, this is all really new. I mean, we're just kind of digging in and learning about what you guys have started and are continuing to do. And I'm not going to lie, it's pretty overwhelming to kind of sit here and try to absorb it all and then really see like what's really going on. I don't think a lot of people realize that. I really don't. I know I didn't. You know, and I've never really been part of a board, or I wasn't a PTA, you know, kind of guy or anything like that. But this is really deep, important stuff that, you know, that just has been lacking for forever. I mean, and you can tell it's still in its infancy, and, you know, there's tons of hard work going into it and lots of thoughtfulness. And, you know, I know we want to see results, and I know that we want to see change. I mean, I think most of us do, I mean, for the better, but I think, you know, the reality of it, it's going to take time, and, you know, we just got to keep pushing forward. And I mean, I think it's just cool. I'll have a lot more to offer once I really know what's going on. I'm really trying to absorb.
May 20th.
It's a
right
ton
there.
of stuff to try to like
It's okay.
hold on to, you know.
Yeah. Your first year as a board member is a blur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
it's so encouraging just to see, I mean, the passion and everything that's coming out of everybody's mouth, and just, you know, it's so encouraging, and it's good to know that, you know, like you were saying about your daughter not wanting to go to Jeff, I didn't want my daughter to go to Jeff either. I went to Jeff, and when I was at Jeff, it was pretty bad. You know, I mean, it was not a good school to be at. And that didn't really have anything to do with the education. That was just the environment that it was back in those days, you know, so it was different. So that's kind of always stuck with me, you know, going through, you know, when kids were growing up and stuff, so. But thank you. Thank you guys for laying all the groundwork and creating this environment, and, you know, making it somewhere where, you know, people want to be. You know, somebody looks up to.
And your daughter is at Jefferson.
She is. Yeah, she is.
Just to follow up with.
Sorry,
and
yeah,
she's
yeah.
there. In the story.
She's doing well. She loves it. Yeah, she's doing really good. So, I mean, it's, you know, it's been a good journey. And now I'm here, and I get to be part of this, so that's even better. So, yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Something before we
Yes,
go.
Ms.
Did
President.
you have anything to say? I don't want to step on you,
Do I have
board
something?
member. You don't need to, but I don't want to step on you.
Supposed to say something?
Not at all.
don't have to.
Let me say something really quickly. So now I've lost my train of thought. That happens at my age. I want to say that we've had, again, many conversations about this, but I'm reminded, I went and saw Michelle Obama speak recently. She just wrote that book, The Light We Carry. And she was talking about, how do you make change, you know? Like, do you make change from the outside? Do you make change from the inside? I mean, I think there's no right way, right? We all have a place. Those people from the outside of the system, you know, telling us we need to make change. And so we all in this room are deciding to be in the system and to make change. I think we are all change makers here. We all see that, you know, like, I want to often just like completely dismantle everything. And wouldn't it be beautiful to just create this idyllic space, doing it all the right way, everything the way it's supposed to be done. And so while that's a beautiful dream, even being the superintendent, even being on the school board, like you think, oh, when I'm this, I'm going to make this stuff happen. And, that's just not how it all works. But I do think that when we are in a position of power and privilege, and so we are able to dismantle the pieces that we can dismantle and rebuild them in the way that they should be built. And so, just that we've all made the decision to be in the system and to dismantle what needs to be dismantled and to rebuild it in the right way. So it's good work that we're doing.
And because it's late, so not doing a deep dive, keeping this more emotional in my comments, like how we're feeling. But I know we have the work study coming up, and so it would be good at the work study to hear about like what, learning more about how we're hiring and looking at using resources to hire more people of color. But then that's just not enough. Like, do what people of color want to work here? Is it an environment that people of color want to be in? So it's not just about the students, but also about the adults. And seeing if we can, is there climate survey and information about how the adults feel working here? And other things like that. So I'm excited to have those discussions. I look forward to the work study. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Batra, and thank you, everyone, for the ongoing equity work, and that it is not a buzzword here, it is the way we live. All right, moving on. Item 16A1, approval of tentative agreement with Teamsters Local Union 856. Ms. Lujan.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see all of you. The item before you this evening is the tentative agreement with Teamsters Local Union 856. It included are the salary schedules that we've agreed to, as well as some language changes about things like agreeing to do monthly or 2 annual meetings, so some contractual changes. And I welcome any questions you may have.
Questions for Ms. Lujan? If none, then I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. All right, Ms. Batra, item 16B1, revision of BP 6146.1, high school graduation requirements.
Hello again. So this board policy was brought to you about a month ago with many revisions, but it did not include the requirement of AB 101 for ethnic studies. However, I am bringing this today to include the language that beginning with 29-30 school year, a student is required to complete 1 semester course in ethnic studies to graduate from high school. We know that this will be implemented way before that, but we wanted to make sure and just put the language there on what the law is. And so it is my recommendation that the board approve the changes before policy 6146.1.
Motion to approve?
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Great, thank you. All right, item 16C1, second interim report, 22-23 budget. Ms. Van Raphorst.
Thank you, President Lee. Good evening, everyone. Before you tonight is the second interim report, which covers the financial state of affairs through January 31st. You have been given the executive summary that describes our overall financial health. The overall finding of the report is that we will be able to meet our financial obligations, which is noted by the positive certification. If you would like me to go over some highlights, I am happy to do that, or I would ask that the board approve the positive certification. But I can submit the report to the county superintendent.
First, any questions or comments?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Great. Okay, thank you. Item 17, consideration of future agenda items. Anything? Okay. Seeing as there are none, we will go on to item 18. Is there a motion to adjourn?
There is.
I'll take that as a motion. I'll take that as a motion to
It was
adjourn.
already on the floor.
All right, and I believe Ms. Tahada had the second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned
I
at
think we should
9:29
always
PM.
have Mr. Walker.